right, I think we're ready. Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for coming. I'm really excited. This is my first time in Linz, and I'm getting to know the city, the people, and so far I love it. You should know that my name is Juan. I am coming actually from Colombia. I was born and raised in Colombia, 25 years, and then 4 months ago I decided to come to Graz, and now I'm settled in Graz. But before telling you about myself and all this stuff, I do rather tell you about what things I built instead of just showing off my CV. Angular now is one of the products I created at some point. It's a bootmarklet that allows you to run any Angular application with just one click. What you need to do is simply go to the website of Angular now, which is this one there. Yeah, this one. Then you drag this one all the way to your bookmark bar, and then go to any Angular project in GitHub. And then once you click that button, it starts running in StackBlix right away. I did this for a workshop I was working on a couple of years ago, and I noticed that this might be helpful for some people. When I published this, people were like, whoa, this is the most amazing idea ever. How can no one, thought about doing this before? Even people from Microsoft and Google, they were astonished. And then it was like, wow, this is so ironic because this is just one line of code, which is this one. But among other things I've done, I also published this script the other day on Twitter, which is a script that will allow you to build more accessible websites. What it will do is that it will gray out any image that doesn't have the alt attribute. Therefore, you will be able to tell which images lack it, and then you can put it on and then make your website more accessible to other people. And again, this was like, whoa, what a great idea. This is so amazing. Whoa. In any case, I'm also the organizer of Angular Medellin, or ex-organizer of Angular Medellin, a community of Angular in Medellin, and also the organizer of a conference. It was called NG Colombia, the first Latin American conference of Angular. And in any case, I'm also a Google developer expert in Angular and web technologies. This is me, if you can't see me. If at some point are you interested in becoming a Google developer expert as well, you can reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to nominate you to become the next Google developer expert. Other than that, you can find me on Twitter as JDJuan, and the slides of my talk are right here. So let's get started with something you can understand, something that you can refer to, and this is a food delivery service analogy. If you ever used Yum or VeloFood or whatever, then you know what I'm talking about. It's like when you're hungry and then you don't want to go to the restaurant, so you just open the app and order the food. The way it works is that you just go to the app, find what you like, the guy goes pick up the food, goes in the bike, and deliver it to you. This is as simple as that, and probably some of you have done it before. The thing is that right here, right now, this is called a asynchronous process. Asynchronous process because it doesn't happen immediately. It takes a time. You don't press the button and then the food is there. Now it takes some 30 minutes, 1 hour, sometimes more. And asynchronous processes are just events that happens over time, just like in this timeline. Just at some point they just fire. That's a synchronous process, and JavaScript is full of them. If you ever work with callbacks or promises, then you're familiar with what this is. And certainly, lately, we've been seeing even more improvements in how we handle those. So this is what we're going to take a look at. Nevertheless, you should know that when it comes to synchronous processes, you might also find them in the UI of your application. For example, when you click in a field, when you type, when you press button, when you move your mouse, when you hover, whatever, you name it. There's a lot of events happening right now, and all of them are asynchronous. That means you don't know what they're going to fire. Also, you can find them in things you might be more familiar with, like HTTP requests, when you're trying to get information from a server. This is also a synchronous process. So, let's play a game. How would you do it in JavaScript? It's a game in which I'm going to give you some challenges, and I hope each one of you, try to figure out how you would solve them. Actually, you're going to get rewards after this, so if you raise up your hand and you know the answer, just say it right away. So the first question is, how would you implement a HTTP request that it's fired every 5 seconds? Like a HTTP request that it's fired every 5 seconds. There is a keyword to solve this. There is a function in JavaScript that you can use to solve this problem over there. That's the answer. Very well. You get 100 points. What's your name? Nicholas. Very well. Yeah, sure. I'll think about it. In any case, the thing becomes more interesting. It's when you need to filter repeated values, right? What if you're fetching the same information over and over again, but you don't want to kind of redraw the DOM if it's the same data? So you need to kind of store the information in a variable and then compare it and then filter, etc. These scenarios tend to become more complex. Let's take a look at challenge number 2. Are you ready? It goes like this. On a failed HTTP request, try again 3 times. How would you do this? Think about it for a second. This is a little bit more tricky. You make an HTTP request, the server is down, you need to try 3 more times. How would you do it? What would you need to do it if you needed to do it in JavaScript? It's simpler than you think, but it's tricky though. Start with let. And it goes like this. A counter. You need a counter. It's as simple as that. You need a counter, and every time you fail, you increase the counter, and then once it reaches number 3 or number 2, whatever, you just stopped. It's as simple as that. But then it also can become more complex. What if they tell you, hey, but you need to wait 5 seconds before the HTTP has failed? Because of course you don't want to make 3 HTTP requests right after the other. You want to wait 5 seconds in case the server was down and you want to try it again. That's a typical scenario you will find in fintech applications. So scenarios like this one or like this one where you need to catch information are scenarios that you will find when you're working with JavaScript. And so you need to be able to handle them gracefully. So this is where RxJS comes in handy. Let's take a look. RxJS, according to the definition, it's a library of reactive programming using observables to make it easier to compose asynchronous or callback-based code. Clearly, most of you understood what it was, but some of you, like me, have no idea what this means. It's so complex. Nobody can tell what this actually means. So I managed to put some gray areas there, and this is the real definition. RxJS is just a library for asynchronous code. And that's all you need to remember if you never used it before. It's a library for asynchronous code. And you already know the nature of asynchronous things that happen over time. So what RxJS composed of? The 2 main things you need to remember when you're talking about RxJS are, number 1, observables, which you may hear of with the observer patterns, which is quite all already, and the operators. So we're going to take a look at those 2 very closely. Not this kind of observables, but these ones. If you ever seen them, this diagram before, these are for observables usually. If you haven't, don't pay much attention to them. They tend to be really complex, and I don't really like them. And I have probably a better idea to teach you how to understand observables better. So we're going to take a look at that right now with something called Rick and Morty. How many have you seen Rick and Morty before? Raise up your hands. Okay, for the rest, this is probably more important than the talk itself. You should go back and watch Netflix. Rick and Morty is really good. It's my favorite show, so I do really recommend it. But nevertheless, if you have ever used Yum, you would know that the typical process in which you would order food is that you go to the website, right? Like Yum, which is this screenshot I took a couple of hours ago. And then you will see some restaurants. So this is the thing you need to remember. You will see restaurants there where you can pick. Actually, this is the search for this specific menu. If you want to search for food, this is what you're going to get right away. And then after that, you're going to get, you are the consumer, of course, which wants to eat the food. And then you're going to go to the checkout, where you're going to finally commit that you want the food. And until you hit this button, you're not going to get the food, only when you hit it. So if we summarize it, the whole process at the end, all you have is the food, the pizza, or whatever you want. So in 4 steps, this is summarized like this. You get restaurants, you get consumer, you get a checkout, and you get the food. These are the 4 parts of an observable. But the truth is that in programming, they're not called like this. They're actually called the following way. Instead of consumer, you're going to call this observer. So this is the person that is making the purchase. Instead of restaurants, you have observable. The streams, it's also a synonym. The observable itself is the thing you're trying to get. Instead of a checkout, you have a subscription, which is pretty much the point in which you said, like, yes, I want this. And finally, instead of the food, you get the content. These are the 4 tenets of observables. If you understood this analogy, then you're already good to go with RxJS. Now let's take a look at what code looks like. If you take a look at this, for example, just pay attention to this. Just look at it for 10 seconds. Try to understand where are these concepts being applied to. Yes, very good. Very good. So, technically, what's happening here is that in the first line, I'm making an HTTP request. And this first thing is our observable. Just so you know, a quick hint, the things that have this $sign at the end, those are observable variables, the variables that hold unobservable. So data, it's our observable. That's number 1. Number 2, we have the subscription, which is the result of actually subscribing, which is kind of saying, like, I do want the information. Then number 3, we have this callback right here. I guess you see it, this function, this arrow function. That's our observer. It's the one that knows what to do with the content, like we know what to do with the food, eat it. So what does this observer does with the content? Well, it console logs it. That's all it does. This is the analogy applied to actually code. And this is how you will see a lot of code in Angular applications for sure, or in any JavaScript application that uses the library. So now you need to remember 4 things about observables that makes it different from promises if you ever use promises, because probably some of you are familiar with those. Number 1 is that observables are lazy. That means that observables are not fired right away. As opposed to promises, once you declare a promise, what's going to happen is that the promise is going to be executed right away. So if you make an HTTP request, it's going to go to the server and get it right away, and you have no time to say, wait, I don't want it. Just like if you go to, to the food and then you say, like, oh, this is an interesting restaurant. Your credit card has been charged. It's like, fuck, what? I didn't want that. So that's the comparison between promises and observables. Number 2, observables are like Mr. Robot. They are cancelable. This used to be a Netflix series, really good series, but it got canceled. But yes, observables are cancelable. That means that at some point when you're making this request to the restaurant saying, like, yeah, I want this pizza, it may actually, you can say, no, I don't want it anymore because, it took too long or whatever. You can do that with observables, whereas you cannot do it with promises. Number 3, observables give you multiple values. If you ever see Rick and Morty, you may remember Mr. Mystics. In any case, it gives you multiple values. So whereas promises only gives you 1, with observables you can connect those, for example, to socket-based endpoints, so you can get data constantly, or use HTTP polling, which is also a technique to get different data, like constantly. And finally, observables are like call centers. They have operators. So these operators allows you to actually transform and work with the information in ways that make it really, really awesome and elegant. And this is where the value of RxJS resides on. So some people on the internet say, hey, RxJS operators are like Lodash functions, but for events. I never use Lodash, though, not that much. So I came up with my very own definition. RxJS operators are like jQuery, except that they won't die, I hope. Kidding, jQuery is amazing. In any case, I think we kind of managed to talk about different things about observables, but I think it's important that we take a look at the demo. So right now, I have an application built with glitch right here. It's empty. It looks like it's empty, but it's not. Let's start with something simple. I'm going to zoom in so everyone can see. Can you see the screen, all of you in the back? Good? Okay, sure. You can see your phone screen because you're busy. Hello, Sebastian. Now he's looking at me. In any case, I'm going to open the app right here. And if I open the console log and come here, here it is. Hello, Sebastian. So there we are. We have an app, front-end app that's working right there. This app, I'm going to show you something interesting. Actually, you can use DOM to, for example, read events. So you can do something like document dot add event listener, and then you can say, hey, I want every time the mouse moves, I want you to console log it. I want you to console log it. So technically, if I come here and then I move the mouse around, guess what? I'm getting all the events. That's quite cool. That's a synchronous process right there. Now, let's take a look at how you would do it with RxJS. So I'm going to remove this, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import RxJS, which is already imported in this project, but I'm going to import a function called from event. It will allow me to get the information from the DOM. So it goes like this. Const, and I'm going to say from event, then I'm going to say equals, this is a right object destructuring, I guess, RxJS. Yep. And then I'm going to say, hey, I want to create a stream, a observable. So this observable, I'm going to call it mouse move, right? Because we give proper names to variables. Mouse move, and then I'm going to say, I want this observable to be generated from an event that's coming from the DOM, and I want it to be mouse move. So this is it. This is my observable right there. But guess what? It's not going to print anything yet. Because unless I subscribe, nothing's going to happen. Just like unless you check out the food on the food delivery service. So what we need to do now is we're going to say, hey, mouse move, I want you to subscribe. And I want you to console log whatever you get. It's as simple as that. That's our observer. And if I come here, let's hope, yeah, it's still working. So yeah, it's RxJS right there. But again, I told you, RxJS itself is not that special unless you use the operators. So let's take a look at how operators could look like. So if we want to use an operator, I would suggest we use one called delay. Had a little stroke. And here we go, operators. And then to use delay, it's as simple as saying, hey, I want to pipe something here. I want to, put an operator in the middle to transform whatever we have there. I want to say, for example, delay. And I want a delay of 5 seconds. And what's going to happen is that it's going to work just like it was working, but instead of printing data right away, it's going to wait 5 seconds before doing it. So if I move the mouse around, 2, 3, 4, 5, ignition, there it is. Now, this is interesting and all, this is cool, but it's more interesting when you mix it with a function that you can see something graphical. So I prepared something for you today. I created a function already in a canvas, which I have prepared, called paint. So I'm going to import paint from the canvas, and then it's like this, slash canvas.js, like it's like this. Yep, and what I'm going to do is instead of printing, I'm going to paint, which might be more graphical and more interesting. So if I close this window and reload, and then move the mouse around, and we wait 5 seconds, this is what we see. So I know it's impressive, and that's the reason you're not applauding right now, but that's okay. In any case, it was this simple. It's composing things the way you can manage your streams. Of course, managing an animation is quite simple, but then managing the scenarios I mentioned earlier, which are from real case scenarios, those are much more interesting when it comes to the operators. So this leverage a lot of issues. To finalize my talk, I want to give you a real example of an API being fetched and working with it. So I'm going to switch to another project, which is also empty. Nevertheless, I have prepared some code here. This is an Angular project, but don't be biased. You can do it in any JavaScript project that you just need to import RxJS. And what I have here is an API called yes/no.whatthefuck. And it's an API, guess what, created by some Austrian guy along with some other friends. And that was interesting, the guys from Vienna, as far as I know. And this API is quite interesting because it will always give you a different GIF, whether saying yes or no. So, for example, let's go back to the talk. If you had to ask a yes or no question, which one would that be? Whoever wants to participate, a yes or no question. What's that?
Yes.
No, but a question.
Will you attend the next ScriptConf?
Will I attend the next ScriptConf? Let's take a look. It's absolutely, of course, I'm going there. Yes. So this is what the API is going to give us. A random GIF every time. So what we're going to do is that we're going to use it. In fact, if I come to the API and open the link, you will be able to see it in action by just seeing different random characters. So we can ask like, okay, that's Nick is going to get his beer, the one he ordered earlier, for answering correctly. Of course he will. It's right there. Yes, that guy. In any case, we're going to use this API right away. And how we're going to do it is pretty simple. First of all, we're going to define a observable, which we already know how. So we're going to call it data for now. There you are. Next thing is that we're going to make an HTTP request, and we're going to assign it to data. So we're going to say, I'm going to put this app here so you all can see it. This.http.get, and then we're going to go to this.url. So we just, right here, we're just creating the observable. And what's the last thing we need to do? We need to subscribe. And we can for sure do that. So we can say this.data.subscribe. Oops, it's not working. Why it's not? Because I'd rather give it let's do this. Let's use TypeScript because why not, right? Yeah, that's better. Subscribed, and then we're going to do console.log. So technically, if I save this and then go to the project, what we should be able to see in the console is that it made an HTTP request, which in fact is right here. And this request has 3 parameters. One of them is the image, which has a GIF. So we're going to show that GIF right in the DOM. And how are we going to do that? Well, it's really simple. We're going to leverage a tool that Angular provides, which is called the async pipe, which pretty much manages the subscription itself. So this is how it looks like. Take a look at this. I'm going to remove this line completely. I'm going to switch to the view where the HTML resides, which is this one. And then I'm going to create an image. And then I'm going to say, hey, I wanted the source to be actually the observable I had before, which is data. But I need you to subscribe first. So I'm going to subscribe with the async pipe. And then later on, I need to access the image property, which was the one that holds the image. So if we do this, and we save, and we go back to the application, there you are. You get the error. Yeah, you get the different GIF every time. So that was pretty cool and old and simple and easy. And easy. Yes, very easy. So we're gonna finish with something that again leverages the powerful or the power of RxJS, which is the operators. So in order to use them, we're gonna use pipe again, and in this case, we're gonna use an operator called plugged. And guess what plugged does? Plugged allows me to get a given property out of an object. So I can do, hey, I want the image. I don't care about anything else, just discard everything else. I need the image. I'm going to import plugged. Okay, to import plug, I just need to import it here. And once I do that, I don't need to do this anymore. And then if I save, it will continue to work exactly. So yep, that's how simple it is to deal with observables, and that's pretty much all the logic you would know Of course, these scenarios can get more interesting and more complicated the more real applications you work in, like I do. I write RxJS on a daily basis in my work, and it really is very convenient because of how composable it becomes. In any case, I want to thank you all so much for being here. These are the resources where you can find some more information. Of course, you can find it on the slides. And that was it. Thank you very much.